Good morning and welcome to the last show in this series of the breakfast show with us, the Bookshop Band, for the Wigtown Book Festival. We are delighted this morning to be joined by three lovely guests. First up, we have Karen Campbell joining us from Gatehouse of Fleet.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. We have Helena
Hiya.
Cochrane joining us from just around the corner at Old Bank Bookshop in Wigtown. And finally, we have Rachel Joyce joining us down in just outside Stroud. Is that right, Rachel?
Yes. Good morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this, very blustery. Well, it's actually really blustery and rainy that side, and that side over the bay, there's a little eking of sun coming in. So, which actually, if the sun does come in, Beth's face will light up like that. So
we've had to block out the sun a couple of times this week. Not yesterday because it was so dark and miserable.
And not today yet.
Hopefully not today.
Hopefully Beth will be blinded shortly. But we, as ever, we're going to start off with a song to lead us into our first guest of the morning. And we thought we'd start off with a song inspired by The Dust That Falls from Dreams by Louis de Bernier, which is kind of like a big saga, a family saga set just before the First World War and leading into it. And the song we've got is inspired by the kind of love story between two of the characters. One of the characters is a pilot, and so we've tried to tell the story through the language and imagery of an aerial dogfight, which I'm not sure Louis approved of, but there we go. No, he was very, very gracious in his response. It was lovely. But Louis writes. He's quite often writing books in sort of set in continental Europe and things. So we thought, Karen, this might lead into your lovely book. But here we go. Just going to take off my headphones. It's called the what is it called? It's not The Dust.
Further on this
journey. That's what it's called. Then we saw Thank you very much. So, Karen, your book, "The Sound of the Hours." Could you tell us a little bit about that, please? Because it's set in, or if I may, it's like a radio show where I do no research at all, but set in Spain,
It's okay.
Italy.
Italy.
Yes. Tell,
Yes.
tell me about. Yeah.
That song was just beautiful, by the way. That was a wee lump in my
Thanks,
throat
Karen.
there. It's lovely. Really gorgeous.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
my novel is a historical book, and it's set in Italy in World War II. And it's quite a departure for me. I don't write historical fiction, but I'm sure Rachel will agree. You kind of just follow the story sometimes if it gets under your skin. And we were on holiday in Italy in a wee town called Barga, which is about an hour from Pisa. And it proclaims itself as you go there the most. Hello, are we still there? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, can you say that last bit
And
again, Karen?
it proclaims itself the most.
they're okay, the most Scottish town in Italy.
Oh,
It's full of Scots Italians. There's sort of back and forth from the 1800s, people coming to Scotland, setting up families, homes, businesses, going back, building properties in Barga. And there's this lovely sort of, I describe it in the book as a kind of backstitched to and fro through the generations. So it's quite a magical place. Broad, you're in Italy, great food, but when you ask for things in halting Italian, people reply to you in Glaswegian accents. It's
Really?
a language
That's
barrier there
amazing.
either. So I learned when I was there about it really is. And yeah, just the whole history. I didn't know anything about it before I went, but that part of Italy, which is beautiful and bucolic, and you look over these big empty spaces, lovely rolling countryside, mountains, and it was a theatre of war. It was right on the Gothic line, so it was fought over by both sides, and it was, really battered and bruised in the war. And then into that mix, it was liberated, at least for a wee while, by American soldiers who were a segregated unit of black soldiers called the Buffaloes. So when I heard all these different things that had happened there, I think I always write about identity, and I write about I don't know, what facades show and what's behind them. And it just made me think, when you are in a place where there's lots of different political things tugging on you, there's different loyalties. If you were a Scots Italian, which side were you on in the war? Italy was in two different sides in the war. And then you've got other soldiers coming from a different place again, who don't even have the vote at home, the Americans, yet they were, dying overseas for a country that didn't recognise them. So all of that just made me greedy for the story, and I started doing loads of research, and it took about 4 years to write the whole thing. So I boiled it down into a love story, because that's the best way to tell. War's painful, it's awful, but if you can put a wee bit of light and love in it, it makes the unpalatable stuff, I think, more bearable. And it height too, I suppose. When people have got something to lose, things really matter. So the story is about a young Scots Italian girl living in Barga, who is young, naive, a bit bored, to be honest. War comes and she thinks, yeah, the world's getting exciting, and then learns, no, it's not. It's something you don't want in your doorstep. But in the midst of that, she meets and falls in love with a black American soldier called Frank. And so it's a story of both of them, and I tried to, in some way, shed a wee bit of light on what happened in Italy during the war, because you go somewhere like, and everything's memorialized. Yet there's you go to the beaches with the Normandy landings, where there's museums, there's boards that explain it. There's nothing, and it made me wonder if maybe because it was so difficult to pick a side, the aftermath, it's to move on, because people did what they had to survive. So yeah, it was fascinating, and I loved writing it, but I don't know if it stymies you a wee bit because you have to follow what really happened. Normally in your novelist's head, you can go anywhere and invent any situation, but I had to keep going back to my map that I had on the wall of who was where when. And so I thought, oh, damn, I can't have those two meeting at that point because those soldiers wouldn't have been there then. So, yeah, I enjoyed the exercise in it, but I think I'll go back to contemporary fiction after this one.
Yeah, it's what a fascinating place and moment in history. I can see how you would have been compelled to step out of what you'd normally do to follow the story. It's quite interesting with songwriting as well. With us anyway, like Rachel will tell you. So we kind of respond to the books, but it's very much our response as readers. Like we get it wrong completely all the time. It's just impressions that we've got, and then sort of bouncing back as a song. They're not what's the word? Not reworkings of the book or anything like that. But sometimes, like, and especially it's with
I
kind
think
of
that's what's
historical.
lovely about art
Yeah,
and music.
thank you. Yeah, I think so. But then sometimes, like, we did a book recently, which was The Spinning Heart by Donald Ryan, which was very much set in a time and a place in Irish history. And suddenly the songwriting became quite different because, like, we had to get the facts right because we were dealing with a thing of a story in history separate from what we were doing and even separate from the book that he was writing, that you felt you had to honor by getting it right. And there's a songwriters, like, we never have to get it right,
Yeah,
like, so but it's quite tricky, but it was a good exercise. But yeah, so I can see, so you were kind of drawn
yeah.
into that historical fiction world of actually having to get it right, as well as construct your story around these stake posts that were already in the ground.
Yeah,
No, it sounds
yeah,
really
definitely.
fascinating.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but I think what you're saying about you interpret things with music and you don't always get it right. I did a creative writing master's years ago, and I remember sitting in a workshop and someone was, they were workshopping my story as they do, and it was really uncomfortable. And people were ascribing motivations to a character that I'd never thought of when I wrote, and I was sitting there thinking, I've got this wrong. They don't know what it is I mean. But as time goes on, I think with all sort of art, the whole point is that you put it out in the world and then somebody else makes something different of it. They take something from it that they need or recognize, and that's good if you leave spaces for people to do that. So I'm all for interpretation and nuance rather than getting something right. I don't think you ever can.
No, and it becomes something personal to that particular person, doesn't it? Like you say, they can relate to a particular point that you might not have even thought of, but it
Yeah.
means a lot to that particular person because it's their experience of the world and of life. And Karen, you've got a new creative project going on at the moment where you're writer in residence for the council. Can you talk a little bit about that and
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
experiences?
Yeah, that's just been since August. And what I'm doing is it's part of a bigger project that has been run by the Stove in Dumfries, and it's called Atlas Pandemica. And the project is to try and map across Dumfries and Galloway in an artistic way um, what the pandemic has done, how it's affected people, how the region's been responding. And there's all sorts of different projects. There's one of the artists is wanting to develop a series of Zen gardens that somebody will tend mindfully. Someone else is charting the history of different pandemics in the region. And my job is to be writer in residence with the council and basically talk to as many council staff as I can who are willing to trust me with their stories and just get a sense of the sorts of difficulties and maybe isolation they felt doing their job and that they might have had to change how they work or, completely go into another job. I mean, one gym instructor, when the gym shut, he volunteered to become a bin man because bin men became frontline service that was essential. And then talking to a bin man, they were saying, do you know, folk are leaving us presents. Normally we get complaints for not putting the bin right back by the gate. And now we were coming out and there was like chocolates and whiskey on the bin van. Incredible. So I'm just trying to capture wee things like that. And also more serious stuff too, people trying remotely social workers trying to deal with families in crisis, and they can't actually go into the house. But what I'm doing is I'm fictionalizing them all, because that helps, I hope, folk to trust me with their stories. Then they're not necessarily identified. I can take wee elements and make something bigger from it.
That's wonderful, and it's going to be such a fascinating story. And then is that going to be turned into something that we can access in the future?
Hopefully it will be an anthology. Certainly it'll be online. I'm hoping we might get funding to make it an actual book. And some of the stories I'm writing, they seem to be coming out more as monologues, because it's on the phone all the time. I can't see people face to face, so it's conversations I'm gathering, and some of them are coming out as monologues when I write. So I was thinking with those ones, maybe get some local actors to actually speak them and put that online as well. So it's a different way of hearing what's happening. So, and then Atlas Pandemica as a whole, there's going to be some artwork at the end of it that combines all of what the different artists are doing. What that is, nobody quite knows yet. But
No.
that's fun, the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe there'll be a song at the end of it as well.
That would be lovely, yes.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds really fascinating. And actually going through the council is a really interesting place to go, because the council has, its arms reach out into all elements of society around here. So it's actually quite an interesting way of coming through the cog in the wheel back to of how things have been functioning. Oh, it sounds really interesting. Thank you. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You can purchase copies of Karen's book, to anyone who's watching, via the Wigtown Festival bookshop. I think there's a link in the video, or indeed any good independent bookshop. So thank you for that. We will move on now to our second guest of this morning, Helena Cochrane. Helena, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
Helena,
much for having me.
Tell everyone where you are and the context of which you're coming to us from.
So I'm based above the Old Bank Bookshop in Wigtown. So my mum and dad, Joyce and Ian, run the Old Bank Bookshop. And it's been really interesting to sort of grow up with the festival. I've never had anything different. So every year, bar this year, we've had a tent going up in the garden, and we've had people coming to stay with us. And it's been really interesting. And I think that sort of sparked my huge interest in space. So what I do is I take equipment outside in the middle of the night in the freezing cold when it's dark and everyone's meant to be asleep. And I take photos of things in space millions of light years away. And I think the festival's had a huge impact on that, because we have this thing called Big Bang, which again was meant to be happening in March and April time this year. And I have that opportunity that not many other people do, to sort of meet other people from around the world that have the same interests as me.
It's such a shame they're not happening physically, but they've been but digitally speaking, do you think Big Bang will run like next year? Have you got any inclination? Can you predict to us, Helena?
I have no idea, but I'd love to say that it would happen online, because it's an awesome opportunity for people with the same sort of mindset to get together and talk, and the amounts of interesting people we get on are incredible. So I'd love to say that it's happening online. I have no idea, but I'd love to say that, yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say we've known Helena since maybe you were 10 or so, or
10,
maybe even younger, something like that. And we've seen you kind of grow, and we've seen all these people come to Wigtown, and we can only hope the same for our own daughter, who's now 3. But just meeting, I think Wigtown is quite an international place, and you've had people from NASA come here, and from all different kind of walks, and philosophy and literature and science, and that's really kind of helped, like you say, spark your interest, and it's really important, and the reading as well that you have. But I was also going to ask you about your observatory in your garden and your application to the Dengineers.
That's a story. So when I was 11, so 3 years ago now, my math is right, I applied for this show on a CBBC channel on the television called The Dengineers. And I watched it every morning before going to primary school at 8 o'clock while I was doing my hair. And I watched it every morning, and I was like, this would be absolutely awesome if I could get this to happen in Wigtown. So I thought of an idea, and I thought that I'd want an observatory to keep all my stuff in, maybe later on start a YouTube channel. But to be honest, at that point, I hadn't even thought of that. And so I sent my application in, not thinking anything of it. I was just like, none of this is going to happen. It's just like a stab in the dark, really. I sent it in, and I can't remember how long it was after, but I got a phone call. Mum got a phone call even, and I came home from school, and she was like, they want to interview you. And I was like, what? And so there was this long interview process that took quite a while, a few months, I think. I applied in the December, and they came over the April and June. And I couldn't tell anyone what was happening, which was, I think, the most frustrating part for an 11-year-old, like not being able to say to your friends and pals at school what the heck was going on. So, but it was really nice at the end, actually, because all my class got to take part in the end, which was really nice. And to this day, people still talk to me about it. But I have that in the garden, and that's sort of where I store all my equipment, and that's where I film my YouTube videos as well. So I started a YouTube channel after the engineers left, and that kicked off as well.
And could you tell us a bit about your equipment and where some of that has come from? Maybe also a bit of a dream for you.
So after the engineers left, this was like a year or two after I decided to make a year, I'd say I was 12, 13. I decided to start filming. I didn't start publishing stuff until I was 14. So I've only been doing filming publicly for a year and a half now. But a year and a half, if you'd stuck me in front of a camera, I would have cried. But now, like a year and a half on, I'm used to it. And so I started my YouTube, and there's many telescope companies, lots of different manufacturers offering lots of different things. And I got an email one day from my favorite telescope company called Skywatcher. And they're based in California. And I got an email, and they were like, hey, we really like what you're doing. I hadn't started taking photos of deep space at this point, so I hadn't started at all. I was only focusing on the moon. And they were like, we really love what you're doing. Can we send you some equipment? I was like, yes. No. Yes, of course. So the deal was that they sent me the equipment. I would review it for them as a complete beginner, because I've noticed that a lot of other people that are doing this sort of stuff on YouTube have been in it for a while. And when they start filming, they know what they're doing. I started filming, I had no idea what I was doing. So looking back on my first video is just traumatizing. But I had no idea what I was doing. And I learned this equipment going on. Each video I learned something new, and I sort of brought everyone with me, because I thought that was something missing from YouTube. Like, they didn't show the process from complete, like, nothing to where I am now a year and a half on. So I thought that was important to show that.
That's really good. Do you happen to have any of the photos that you've taken recently from Wigtown?
Yeah. Let's hope that this share screen thing works, but I can share my screen. Can you see that okay?
No. Describe it to us.
Maybe I have to click share. There we go.
Oh yeah.
So
okay.
Can you see that now? Yeah.
Yeah, I can bring
Ben
it.
can bring
in.
it up.
There we
That's
go.
it. Wow.
They're absolutely. So these are taken from Wigtown.
Yeah, these are taken from my
Wow.
back garden.
It's
Wow.
incredible, Helena. It's so amazing. And can people can follow you on Instagram and find your YouTube channel? How will they find those?
So my Instagram handle is Helena's_astro. And my YouTube channel is Helena's Astrophotography. And I look at my photos, and I don't see the good. It's really bad. Like, I only see the things that I want to improve on. I never see the good things. So I'll look at that, and someone will go, oh, that looks really cool. And I'll be like, actually. But yeah, I've really pleased with how far I've come. Can I scroll down and show the beginning? Yes. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
So I was starting from things like this, like little lines in the sky and little blobs. And that's really where I started from. And this is my equipment here. That's roughly what it looks like.
Wow. Super cool.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, it looks amazing.
incredible. Wow. And
Yeah.
we find it incredibly inspiring. And it's such a shame we haven't been able to see you as much as we would have liked, because we're just across the square, really, aren't we? We're almost neighbours.
Yeah.
We used to be neighbours. But
Yeah, we did.
we haven't seen as much as you'd like to, but it's really lovely to see your process and your developing your skills online. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing all of that
thank
with
you.
us.
Well, I mean, one of the things about Wigtown is that it's in the dark sky, one of the dark sky areas, and so it has a big observatory up in the forest, and the county of Dumfries and Galloway is incredibly, it's mostly forest, so it is during the winter it's very, very dark. I'd say during the summer it's quite light because we're up in Scotland, and it's
to give you an idea, to measure the light pollution, there's this thing called the Bortle scale, and 1 is complete darkness and 10 is like major city light pollution. And so where I am is Bortle 2, and where the dark sky location's Bortle 1. And I know that I have astrophotographer friends that are living in the city, and they're like, I'd do anything to be like next door to a Bortle 1 site. So.
Well, and just very quickly, Helena, so growing up in Wigtown, you know all these festivals and things coming in, and there's also the kind of the children's and youth stream of the Wigtown Book Festival. Could you tell us very quickly about those streams of the festival as well? Because basically there's something for all ages, and you're a recipient of that.
Yeah, so the Children's Festival runs for people up to the ages of 12 and 13, although it's really all ages. And I made the transition. I was doing the Children's Festival. I was meeting loads of interesting people when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10, carried on till I was like 12. And then I was like, what was Wigtown the Festival, WTF then, which is Wigtown YA now. We've rebranded. I knew I wanted to be on the young person's team, and I knew I wanted to be able to program these people, meet these people backstage, talk to them. So I asked the Wigtown, what is now the Wigtown YA team, whether I could join, and we do what would normally be weekly in-person meetings to plan events. And I think it's a really nice opportunity for young people around here in a rural area to get to plan, and we can video chat them and talk to the authors about their experiences and their books, which is really interesting. So I've currently been on the YA team for 2 years, but I've been involved with the festival for much longer.
And people can check out the events that we've had this year for the YA strand on the Wigtown Book Festival site. Helena, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, not at all. It's fascinating. Beth has chosen a song to play.
Well, we were thinking about books that we had that had star in the title. We thought that might be good. But we've actually chosen The Starless Sea.
So it's no stars.
No stars.
No stars, but it's got stars in the title.
But it does talk about It does talk about stars within it. But it's by Erin Morgenstern. I don't know if you guys know that. She wrote The Night Circus. Angle it. It's got beautiful golden bee on the front of it, and some great pictures on the edges of the pages there. But I won't say too much about it because we're quite short of time. But it's a wonderful, otherworldly, kind of reminded me a bit Philip Pullman, a bit who else? Thinking of David Mitchell and some other, basically worlds through doors and. Kind of signs and keys and starless seas. There we go. And books. It's very much about books and sculpting. How does it go, though? There we go. Okay. Hang on. I'm going to take these off. Sorry, everybody. I can't hear. Save me, sculptor of our dreams and words, how you whisper, work and weave, buried deep, hidden in the breeze and time, or a pocket or the sea. Drink me
was wrong not to do that.
So nice of an audience. Oh my God.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you, Helena. It was really lovely to chat to you on a
lovely to
Sunday
see.
morning.
I always love seeing
My
photos like that,
pleasure.
because it's like you look at the sky but you never see these things yourself, but they're right there above you. Thank you. So joining us now, our third guest of this morning, Rachel Joyce. It's so lovely to have you here. We've been playing songs inspired by your books for pretty much all our Bookshop Band lives, and we are really excited to hear that there's another book that we haven't read. And you've got these amazing sort of golden metallic beetles behind me. Can you?
I have so many beetles, and normally I have a pair of beetle earrings as well, but I forgot those. So basically the idea is, because we've had to sort of learn how to be online, haven't we? And we've all had, how to kind of talk about our books and ourselves to laptops and not to people, So I just thought I might spice things up by kind of splattering beetles all over my backdrop, so that if people get really bored, they can count how many beetles I have.
Okay, I'm going to do that while you chat. And so the book is Miss Benson's Beetle.
Yes, look, I have it here just in case because it is actually, I think this is the most beautiful cover, and it actually,
it's glorious.
Actually shimmers.
Yeah, it's really, really. Does Miss Benson's beetle shimmer? Is it a shimmery beetle?
I hope it's the shimmery. Yes. Well, the beetle that she's looking for. Yes, definitely. I mean, it's about two women who leave 1950s Britain to travel to the other side of the world in search of a golden beetle that may or may not exist, is the idea. So it's an adventure story, which I haven't written before, but it's really about female friendship. That's the heart of the book. And the things that, you often think that you're looking for are often not the things that you end up finding.
That's very true of life, I think. We need to leave ourselves open to those things, and sometimes we forget, don't we, that's...
I think so, yes. But I mean, I was also fascinated by the idea of how you go about looking for something that hasn't been found, because it seems to me it requires such a mix of things I'm really interested in, like, knowledge and science, but also faith, and the imagination. And so, I mean, I had to do a lot of research into beetles, and also they go to New Caledonia, which is the other side of the world, an island I don't know. So there was a lot I had to find out. So it was a big adventure for me too. But in terms of shimmeriness, it has a kind of extrovert energy, this book, that I didn't anticipate at all. I actually thought I was going to write a really quiet, tender, short book. And I don't know why I thought that, thinking that I was going to write an adventure story. But anyway, I thought that's what it was going to be. And then I started writing it, and it's about these two women, one of whom, Marjorie Benson, is kind of in her late 40s and is a kind of typical introvert, but has never really had the opportunity to do very much with her life, apart from having this passion for this beetle. And then she has to find an assistant and ends up with the last woman on the planet that she would want, who is her complete polar opposite, this kind of mad, chaotic, yellow-haired, pink-suited, completely inappropriately dressed, attracting trouble wherever she goes, young woman called Enid Pretty. And but anyway, when I put these two together, there was just nothing about them that was going to be quiet. I mean, it is tender, but I think it is the most extrovert, wild book I've written. And
well, it's fascinating.
Go on, sorry.
It's fascinating. It's like, as we were saying, it's like you can have a plan and you can stick to it, or you can set off on something and let life divert and thing. And I guess that's exactly the same in the journey of writing a book as an author, is that, and every author is different, I'm sure, but the amount of times that you hear authors say that they set off with an idea, but then that idea just pulls them off in a direction they didn't expect at all, even if they had a plan.
Yes, plans are great. I always have plans after I've finished the book. I find that's the best time to plan it, because you just don't know when you start. You haven't a clue when you start of where it's going to take you. But I did know, I think it was because I felt very strongly when I was finishing my last book, I thought, I don't know why, as a woman, I am not writing with women specifically I don't know why I'm not writing specifically and only about women. And that was the kind of the key motivations for this book, was to write a kind of the classic adventure story. So taking all those male adventure stories in which there are remarkably few women, and just giving that whole structure to two women who are not at all equipped for that kind of adventure. So it's bound to be chaos. And it was also, I found it extremely liberating as a woman to write just about women. And in fact, there is now one male character who I didn't want at all. I just thought there were going to be no men in this book. And then all Marjorie Benson had to do was interview a load of applicants for her assistant, one of whom was going to be a man. And all he had to do was turn up for a paragraph, not be right for the job, and go. That was it. But every time I wrote this chapter, and I do so much rewriting and editing, even as I'm writing, which I know you're not supposed to do, but is the way that I do it, this little paragraph just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was just like too much detail. And it dawned on me one day that this man could not believe the book was not about him. So I thought, okay, I'll sit down. And I just did a kind of stream of consciousness thing just to see what he was about. And he turned into, so he is now in the book as well. And he is, if you're going to have an adventure, you have to have really somebody who's in your pursuit. And so that's what he became.
Is he desperate to be the third assistant and just keeps getting actually?
Well, this being 1950, he's actually. I think you can't write about the 50s without thinking about the effects of 2 world wars. I mean, especially on women, but on men too. And so he is a prisoner of war and trying to fit back into normal life. I mean, I'm shocked at how they were treated, those men. Just expected to come back and given a suit, not even your own suit, but somebody else's suit, and then expected to fit in again. And how on earth could they? Even if you were going back into a home life.
My grandfather was a Japanese prisoner of war. And
Right.
The stories that in his and he came back, and the stories in his little diary are extraordinary. What I remember reading, sorry, it's a complete diversion, but what I remember reading is he used to write down recipes of and they used to get together and all the guys and write down recipes of what they dreamed they would be eating. So each page had a different recipe of things they would imagine to be eating. And we make one of them every year, which is it was like mulled wine, but it was with roasted apples, brandy, cinnamon, and cream. It was like, I've forgotten what it's called, but
It's like a lamb's.
Yeah, lamb's wool
Lamb's
kind
wool.
of drink.
Oh,
And so we
wow.
have that every year. Anyway,
God, I wish I'd
Yeah.
known that.
But I suppose that kept him sane, and I suppose that's it. Like, people have
Yeah.
different processes. So some people just don't talk about it at all, and aren't allowed to talk about it, perhaps, or don't feel like they're allowed because they have to fit back into normal life, and that's
Yes.
not
And where
normal life.
do you put that experience? I mean, I think it's so I found it really interesting. And obviously I did a lot of research then about prisoner of war camps in Burma is what I was looking at.
Yeah. And so the adventure that takes these two contrasting ladies.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me if there's any spoilers, but do they find this beetle, or is that a?
Well, I couldn't possibly tell you.
No, absolutely.
But I mean, they are in pursuit of this tiny but golden beetle, which Darwin is supposed to have heard about. I mean, I made
right.
it all up,
I was
obviously.
going to ask where the motivation for Miss Benson was to know about this beetle.
Well, I mean, like many entomologists, especially amateurs, it starts with something in her childhood, and her father was also a very keen entomologist and beetle collector, but shows her at the beginning of the book, so there's no spoilers here, a book called Incredible Creatures, which is kind of a book of extraordinary creatures in the world whose existence has not yet been proved. Because when originally the whole idea began because I heard a piece on the radio about cryptozoology, about which I knew nothing, and which is, in essence, as I understand it, the science, although scientists say it's not a science, of searching for animals whose existence has not yet been proved. So the Loch Ness Monster is right at the far end of the spectrum. And this poor man was being pilloried on the radio for his belief. And I did think, well, I found it just fascinating. How do you search for something that is perhaps mythical, or perhaps it's been reported in poetry, or maybe somebody's painted it? There is some evidence, however dim, that it might be there. And then how do you go about looking? And the kind of bravery of it, really.
Yeah,
I think you need a 3-year-old to help look for a beetle, or a 2-year-old.
Yeah,
Molly is incredible at finding the tiniest things that you can't even see, but she'll find them, and she can pick them up as well.
Yeah,
like you get a wriggly spider or something.
She can catch a wolf spider. I've never been able to.
Yeah,
do that.
she's so fast.
And actually, with about a year of training, she doesn't harm them either. She's amazing. But actually, that thing of like imagining a creature, like scientists have done that all the time. You have a niche. You find the niche, and you think, well, something must be in this niche. And then so they're doing that too. They're looking for things that there's evidence that something exists, and whether that evidence comes in a poem or in a place or in a scientific, in Darwin's book. I think they're all valid reasons for.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think what's also interesting, which I didn't really understand before, is in talking to so many entomologists, is how important it is in terms of the planet and the environment that you understand what you have before you've lost it, because it's only then that you can understand how the planet is changing and how nature is changing, to adapt. So I found it fascinating.
It was interesting that you said you were taken by this radio program with a subject that you knew nothing about. And I think so often that's the case for like big creative journeys, or the journeys of these two women. It's not when you think about things that you know about that often lead to exciting things. It's when you discover that you know nothing about something, and it pulls you out. I mean, one thing about the Bookshop Band is that we're given books that we would have never necessarily picked off ourselves. We're sent on these new journeys, we're curated through them, but it's getting something that's new and that is always so exciting, and it's
Do you find now that publishers are sending you books because I mean your what you do is so extraordinary. I can't think anybody else who's doing it. I mean, I've been to a few of your concerts and they're amazing.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. You definitely came to the early days concerts, didn't you, Rachel? Which was lovely.
I've got all your albums.
Oh, fantastic. even the newest one, Beth, have you got the newest one?
I haven't got the newest one.
Whoa, let me hold it up.
I will, I'll just grab it. I'll just quickly say my mum has appeared for the first time on Facebook. I've never seen her on Facebook before. It's usually my dad. But she says she loved the latest book. She's read it already, and she loves all your books, Rachel. So I have to comment on that because my mum has never been on Facebook.
She's finally figured out how to use Facebook. Actually, Beth, it's a YouTube comment.
Oh, it's a
YouTube comment. That's why. So this is our latest one, Rachel. Is live in American bookshops, and we recorded it on our tour in America.
Yes, I saw you were there. Yes.
And we were meant to be there this year, releasing that album, and we had a plan for a 6-month crazy journey. We were looking for assistants to look after Molly, but it's obviously not happened. But we've been getting
we have reached people in America because we've been doing our gigs online. We've been playing to people around the world, which is like Helena as well. You're reaching people all around the world, which is one advantage of having this technology that if we didn't have, we would maybe be going a bit more stir crazy, perhaps.
So Rachel, I guess that book came out last year, is that right?
No, it came out in July, and just, I mean, yeah.
Oh, just recently, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
wow.
very, very new.
So this must be again a strange time. You would have had things planned. Or I suppose because it came out a few months into this, it was kind of, you were braced for a lack of touring around.
Yeah, I was braced for that, and I'd sort of begun to realise that everything was going to be, you know, from in my caravan where I work. But it's a very strange thing talking about your book in your own home for some reason. I either find that I say things that are way too intimate, you know, that I just shouldn't be admitting to, or I just don't have the energy.
Karen's nodding.
You know, it's kind of, it's a bizarre. Whereas when you're actually, you know, in a festival, I mean, just seeing at the beginning of your piece, the kind of footage of the festival, I was just thinking, God, I miss it. I miss that so much. That, you know, interaction with people who are reading, and the things that just happen in a room that you don't account for, you know, or somebody asks a question or anything, you know, that is just unexpected. I really miss it.
Yeah, no matter how hard we try, this kind of existence does funnel you, it streamlines you, and your social interactions become less random.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's one of the things that I'll really appreciate when all this moves on, is the value of random interactions, unexpected things, discovering things that you knew nothing about, going off on crazy adventures that yesterday I didn't think I would have done, like the two characters in your book, like those kind of that kind of chaos is to be treasured. And so it's, even though their adventure sounds chaotic, it's a thing to treasure.
I mean, I'm actually really glad I wrote it now, because obviously when I wrote it, I hadn't, you know, no clue about lockdown. But it has turned into a book that is, at a time in life when we can't go anywhere. I mean, to have written a kind of escape adventure story on an island that people don't know has been, I mean, I'm quite pleased that's what came to me, you know, all that time ago.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Rachel. We will play you a song, one of our first songs, inspired by the unlikely pilgrimage of Harold Fry, another journey, a journey to deliver a letter. But we thought we would. We won't try and pretend to explain the book story to you, Rachel, as you're there. But it's a wonderful book.
It's been a while.
Sure I'm sure many of the viewers here might have heard about it. But the song we're going to play is inspired by a moment when Harold meets his wife-to-be as a young man, and he's dancing in a bar. He's having a wonderful time. And Maureen looks over and sees this idiot dancing on the dance floor and is quite intrigued by him and watches him dancing. And Harold notices Maureen watching him but doesn't worry too much about it and carries on dancing the fool. And they start talking, and one thing leads to another, and so starts a sort of another narrative within the book. But when I was reading that, I was thinking, if you knew that was the moment when you met your wife-to-be, there's absolutely no way I would have carried on dancing like an idiot on the dance floor. I would have stopped, sorted out my hair, tried to look cool, propped myself up at the bar, and it would have been an utter disaster. So this song is inspired by that, all of that, and it's called How Not to Woo a Woman.
And just before we play the song, today is our wedding anniversary, our 6th wedding anniversary. So happy wedding anniversary.
It was indeed my dancing that first attracted
I'm
Beth
sure
to me. It really wasn't. Doing your bell part, Rachel. It was on that fateful day you saw me dancing in the bar. Your eyes caught mine, and so I came and whispered in your ear. I hadn't thought of what to say or what you thought of me, but it seemed to go pretty well, and we left early. Move on now, 7 months, and we were married by the shore. With the two of us together, we never wanted more. I'll get a job to feed us and a home to keep us warm, and in a year or so I think our children will be born. So on with 7 years and our little boy is 5. I used to think I'd save him, but at least he's still alive. We'll have our are ups and downs, but I know our love will win. So I never leave this journey, not even at the end. Fast forward 20 years and I'll have been a lucky man. Our children will have grown and left the house back in our hands. We'll grow up by the seaside and we'll drink tea in the car. And I picture us beneath the grave in each other's arms. But now I catch myself as I am dancing in the bar, a little overthinking and perhaps a stage too far. I'll just enjoy the moment anymore, and I would be too scared to dance like a fool, and you'd never see me.
I love that song.
Thanks,
I
Rachel.
really love it.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, thank you all of our lovely guests for joining us this morning. Helena Cochrane from the Old Bank Bookshop, Karen Campbell from Gatehouse of Fleet, and Rachel Joyce from down in Stroud in Wiltshire. Thank you so much. We do hope that you can all come into the town next year for the book festival, and we wish you many chaotic, wonderful adventures, as many as possible over the next coming months.
Definitely. There's still events in the book festival today, so just check out what's happening, and you might be able to catch up on what's happened all week if you haven't managed to. I know I've missed most things this week, so I'm going to try and catch up.
There's a tour of the Old Bank Bookshop up on the website as well, so if you want to see the bookshop where Helena and her parents live and work, that's there. There's a donations link for the Wigtown Book Festival, trying to raise some money. Thank you so much. Oh, there's a link to our shop as well, so if anyone wants to catch up with Rachel and get the complete works, they can get that there. And also there's links to all the authors' books on the Wigtown Book Festival Bookshop site, and we will be going out and buying all of those. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's been tuning in these mornings to watch the breakfast show. And we've been the Bookshop Band, and have a lovely rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
And
you guys, if you want to stay on and chat afterwards, we'll be here for a few minutes. So please do.
But onwards roll the credits. Bye, everybody.
Oh, thank you. Bye.